The Treaty of Turin concluded between France and Piedmont-Sardinia on March 24, 1860 as the instrument by which the Duchy of Savoy and the County of Nice were annexed to France. Background: Emperor Napoleon III of France and the Count of Cavour, Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Sardinia, met in secret at Plombières-les-Bains on 21 July 1858. They agreed that France would support the unification of Italy by Sardinia, provided that the Pope should retain control of Rome. In return, Sardinia was asked to cede the Duchy of Savoy to France along with, more contentiously, the predominantly Italian-speaking county of Nice. In April 1859, Austria, complaining that Sardinia had been supplying arms to Lombard separatists, declared war on Sardinia. The Franco-Sardinian forces defeated the Austrians in several battles, Palestro, Montebello, Magenta and Solferino, but Napoleon III, who had taken personal command of his army, professed himself horrified by the extent of the bloodshed involved and resolved to end the war. The fighting ended with the armistices of Villafranca on 12 July 1859. The armistice led to the Treaty of Zurich of 10 November 1859, which transferred Lombardy to Sardinia. Complete Italian unification was deferred, though as matters turned out, not for long. The late King Charles Albert of Sardinia had been an active Italian nationalist. Among the liberal elites in Francophone Savoy, the idea had grown up that the House of Savoy in Turin had little concern for their province beyond Mont Blanc. In practical terms, at a time when the extent of state activity was increasing across Europe, this was manifest in a perceived discrimination against French speakers when making government appointments. On July 25, 1859, about 30 leading citizens of Chambéry presented an address to Napoleon III, calling for Savoy to be annexed to France. Elsewhere in Savoy, especially in the north, opposition to the idea of French annexation began to mobilize. The formerly Savoyard province of Carouge, adjacent to Geneva, had been transferred to Switzerland in 1816 under an earlier Treaty of Turin, as part of the unbundling of Napoleon I's First French Empire. Scenarios now under discussion included continuing with Savoy as a province of Sardinia, or joining more or even all of the territory with Switzerland, an outcome favored by Great Britain. There was very little support for the idea of a totally autonomous Savoy, the vulnerability of small quasi-autonomous territories having been vividly demonstrated within living memory by Napoleon I. The treaty, faced with the uncertainties implicit in the conflicting scenarios, and unwilling to countenance any further expansion of Switzerland, French and Sardinian diplomats swung into action. The 1860 Treaty of Turin, signed on March 24, 1860, was the outcome. Savoy and Nice found themselves annexed to France as discussed at Plombières in 1858, but subject to certain conditions. Article 1 of the finalized document also stated, in deliberately vague terms, that the annexation would take place after the populations of Nice and Savoy had consented to the arrangement. Sardinian troops evacuated Savoy during March 1860. On April 1, the King of Sardinia released his Savoyard subjects from their oaths of loyalty to the Kingdom of Sardinia, and a suitably crafted plebiscite was held in Nice on April 15 and 16 and in Savoy on April 22 and 23 to provide popular endorsement of the treaty, in order to deflect anticipated resistance from the north of Savoy, where the Swiss solution had its strongest appeal. The creation was confirmed of a form of duty-free zone north of a line defined by Saint-Genix-sur-Guiers, Le Châteillard, Fay-Verges and Eugene. The effect of this provision was that Savoy's northern frontier posts, now to become a part of the French frontier, would be located a significant distance away from the actual frontier with Switzerland. The Treaty of Turin restated the political neutrality of the strip of Savoy north of the frontier posts but south of Switzerland. The neutrality of this land, along with that of Switzerland itself, having already been agreed in 1815 under the terms of the final act of the Congress of Vienna. The outcome of the plebiscite held in Savoy on the 22nd of April was an overwhelming yes to the question, does Savoy wish to be unified with France? Quote, in northern Savoy, the accepted vote was yes and zone, indicating acceptance of the duty-free zone with Switzerland. A similar public vote of support for French annexation had been achieved by plebiscite 1 week earlier in the county of Nice. Logically, it should have been necessary for the outcome of the plebiscite to be known before the treaty could be signed off by the respective monarchs. The fact that the treaty was actually signed off a month before the plebiscite took place, the size of the majorities supporting the treaty, and the wording of the question used for the plebiscite were some of the factors giving rise to subsequent doubts about the conduct of this popular consultation. Treaty of Turin.